We're lined up.
Okay, so the title of the shiur was The Crimes of Bilam, or a halachic analysis into the crimes of Bilam, and the big debate between the Rogachover and the Vilna Gaon. Bilam dies this week in Parshas Matos. As we read, the no numbers is an issue, but it is what it is. The page that starts with the pasuk in the top right corner. And we read a pasuk in Chumash, so it's the page that has the pasuk in the top right. Ve'es malchei Midyan horgu al chaloleim. In this week's parsha, there's a war against Midyan. What's the story? After Bilam fails in his efforts to curse us, he doesn't go back home to his city of Aram until he tries plan B. Plan B is, he tells Balak, if I can't curse them, I can give you some advice. Get your girls from Midian and from Moav. Balak was actually involved in both countries. He was currently the king of Moav at that time, but he was originally a prince of Midian. So there was a unification of the two kingdoms. Bilam tells Balak, get the girls from both nations and have them entice the Jewish men. And particularly, they should, when the Jews try to seduce them, they should say on one condition that you worship, you bow down to the Pa'er Avodah Zarah, which was worshipped particularly by unloading one's excrement in front of that getchke. And that was Bilam's advice, and he was successful. 24,000 Yidden die in a plague. This is recorded in the end of Parshas Balak. 24,000 Yidden die in a plague. Worse than that, about 170,000 Yidden were murdered by the Jewish courts. Those that were caught worshipping the Avodah Zarah were tried in Beis Din, and Rashi quotes in the end of Parshas Balak very bekitzer. He quotes it very short and cryptic and concise. He's quoting Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi in Sanhedrin that says, if you count all the Jewish judges, for every 50 Jewish people there was a judge, and for every all the judges that we have, you count them all together, you'll get 70, 80,000 of them. And it says in Balak, Moshe tells them, Hirgu ish anoshav, I want each judge to kill two, so you times it by two. About 160, 170,000 Jewish people were murdered. So Bilam caused some major damage. But he didn't stay around to watch. He gave the advice, and then he left the scene of the crime. He went back to his place of Aram. In the meantime, the Eibusha tells the Yidden, I want you guys to take vengeance against the country of Midian. This is already learned in last week's parsha, in the beginning of Pinchas. Tzorores HaMidyanim, harass the Midyanim. Look at what they did to you. Look at what they did to you. Get them back. Why only the Midyanim? Why not the Moavim? Balak is the king of Moav. L'chaira, it was the Moabites, the Moavim, who were more involved in the destruction of the Yidden than the Midyanim. So Rashi asked this question, he brings two answers. One is Moav can't be wiped out. We need Rus. We need Rus to one day come from there. So the nation can't be wiped out. Another reason, a pshat reason, is you can't compare Moav and Midian. Moav were legitimately afraid that the Yidden would wipe them out. As Parshas Balak begins, Vayoger Moav, Moav were afraid. The Yidden were heading towards their territory. The Yidden had knocked off Sichain, Oig, in the end of Parshas Chukas. So when Moav hears and they see what happened, they know they're next. Midian Bechlal were not in harm's way. Why did they join the fight? It was out of hate. Midian Nisarvel Lodiv Loyal, they got involved in a fight that wasn't theirs. Moav were justifiably afraid. So God states there needs to be a war against Midian. He says it last week in Pinchas. It happens this week in Matos. In Matos is where the famous war, the Yidden attack the Midyanim, happens. And now we go back to the pasuk, the top right-hand side of the sheet, the one that has the pasuk. The kings of Midian, they killed Al Chaloleim. Al Chaloleim can mean in addition to all the slain. We're going to see another pshat in Rashi, what it means on top of the slain. It can either mean in addition to all those that fell in war. It could also mean that the kings of Midian hid amongst the dead bodies, trying to camouflage themselves, playing dead. And we're going to see in Rashi a third pshat. Who were the kings? Evi, Rekem, Tzur is Balak, Chur, Reva, Chameshes, Malchei Midian, the 5 kings of Midian. And the Pasuk says, by the way, Bilam ben Be'er hargu becharav. Bilam, the son of Be'er, they killed by the sword. So there's tons of questions here. The first shaila is, what's Bilam doing there? In the end of Parshas Balak, when Bilam failed with his curses, and then he gives the advice for the harlotry, it says Bilam went back home to Aram. What's he doing by the war in Midian? Another shaila is, why Bechlal was he killed? He's not a Midiani. God did not authorize the murder of Bilam. Who gave the Jews the right to kill him? This was a war against Midian. That's all there was. There was a green light, a command to fight against Midian. They were never instructed to kill Bilam. So even if he was there, why'd they kill him? And in addition, why does the Pasuk, it speaks about the kings, the 5 kings, and then it says, it could have just said, and also Bilam, but it repeats at the end of the Pasuk, and Bilam they killed Bechodav with the sword. And it doesn't say with a sword, it says with this sword. Lots of interesting nuances in the Pasuk. So last year, exactly a year ago, we had a shir, smaller crowd, and we discussed 4 or 5 different reasons why Bilam was killed by the sword. It's not a repeat this year. So anyone who wants to hear what we discussed, you'll have to locate that shir. Okay, so we begin. Look at the left-hand side. There's a Rashi. There's a couple Rashis over here. The pasuk says Klei HaKodesh. We're on the page with the pasuk on the top right. We're now on the top left side. Rashi says, what holy kalim did they take with them? They took the Aron. There was an ark that would go with the Yidden to war, plus the tzitz. Why the tzitz? Because Bilam was with them, says Rashi, and he helped the kings of Midian fly with witchcraft. V'hu atzmai perechama, and Bilam was flying with them in the sky. So Pinchas showed the tzitz, which had the name of Hashem engraved in the tzitz, v'heim noiflim, and then they fell from the sky. L'kach nemer, that's why it says Rashi, al chalaleim, the Malchei Midian, says the king died. What does it mean, al chalaleim? They literally fell on the corpses of their own soldiers. Shenoiflim ala chalam, they fell on the dead bodies from the air. V'chein bebilam, so to Bilam, says Rashi, Kosov, it also says el chalaleim. Where in Sefer Yeshua? In Sefer Yeshua, the pasuk says, the Yidden killed Bilam ben Be'er, the Koisim, and it says el chalaleim, to the dead bodies. Says Rashi, you know what that means? Bilam also fell from the sky, and he, l'chayra, Rashi is saying he died the same way as the other kings, that they fell, well, how did the 5 kings of Midian die? They died from falling from a great height. L'chayra, that's what Rashi seems to say. They saw the tzitz was mirrored towards them. The name of Hashem shone in their direction, and they fell. It seems like they died after their fall. Says Rashi, so too Bilam, it says he fell on the dead corpses. The problem is the pasuk says Bilam was killed by the sword. So does that mean Bilam survived the fall? The other 5 kings didn't survive the fall? It's unclear. This is Rashi quoting from the Tanchuma. Okay. Underneath is another Rashi in this week's parsha, where Rashi says like this: what was Bilam doing there? Bilam Bechlal, he left after he gave the advice to Balak of the harlotry of the Znus. Bilam heads home. Why afterwards is he in Midian? Says Rashi, Bilam halach sham. You know what Bilam was doing there? Litol schar esim varbo elef shehipul meisol batzasai. Bilam had successfully caused the death 24,000 Jews.
What's up with his number? You know, this is like the 4th or 5th time that 24,000 people die in a war, in a Mageffa, in a this.
Yeah. Rabbi Akiva's Talmidim, 24,000.
It's the 4th or 5th time.
Yeah. They're all connected.
If we have 24,000 floors in a building, maybe we'll skip 24.
Yeah, the Jews skip 24,000.
Some say there were 24,000 people killed in Shechem. Yeah, connection to all the different neshamas. We'll have to say that for a Shabbos afternoon Gilgul drasha. Anyhow, Bilam succeeded. He knocked off 24,000 Jews. The Jews were now afraid of Moav because they all they knew that Moav would just pull out some of their princesses and boom, they're all going to fall. So Bilam felt he succeeded, and therefore Bilam Taka went home. But when he heard, he saw the paper and he saw that he had, look what happened. He said, now they owe me big money. So he went to Midian. So that's why he was there. Now, why did he go to Midian? He should go to Moav. Wasn't Balak the one that hired him? Balak was the one that received the eitzah of the promiscuity, of the harlotry. L'chai, we should get his money from Balak. L'chai should get his money from Balak. Why did he go to Midian? So there's lots of explanations.
No, but he paid money. He didn't do what he was supposed to do.
He did something else. He knocked off 24,000 Jews. The fact is, the Jews were now scared of Moav. That's all he wanted. Balak said, "Vagashenu min haaretz." Says, get rid of them, and that's it. I don't need them to die, just to veer them off my path.
Collecting a price per head.
Yeah, exactly. And not just that, the general goal was attained. The Yidden were now afraid of Moav, and they were going to ignore them and travel around them. And especially according to the Yerushalmi that Rashi quotes that 170,000 Jews were killed by the Jewish courts. That's a third of the Jews were killed. Balak should have been happy. So there's a Sifsei Chachamim over here. On the right hand side is the second piece. Let's read the small words. On the right hand side of the page, the second piece. Ere it happened. Bilam hoye eitzel midyanim. Why was Bilam there? Bilam's from Aram Naharayim. So he says like this: Bilam halach lemidyan levakesh schar. Now, why didn't he go to Balak? Ki heim hoyu sursuri ha'avera. Who were the middlemen? Who actually hired Bilam to come? It was the Ziknei Midian. They were the middlemen. They were the ones that actually gave him the job, and therefore they were the ones that were actually going to forward to him the payment. Inami, or maybe Shema Yisham Beis Hazman. Ki avar derech sham leilechol Balak levakesh schorei. He said it could be that Balak was taka in Moav and Bilam was heading to Moav. He went through Midian on his way to Moav. He happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. He didn't want to dreizich in Midian. He went through there to go to Balak. And he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, or the right place at the right time. Yeah.
Tzur was killed there too.
Right, so you should answer that Balak himself was there.
Yeah.
Apparently Bilam held like the shitta that is not so. Cosby Bas Tzur. Cosby was the daughter of Balak. And Balak was the king of Moav. That's where we explained the Ishbitzer, that when Zimri married Cosby, he was trying to suck out the spark of Moav. Ultimately, what Boaz does years later when he marries Rus. The Maharal himself says...
He said that he saw that he's going to come from him.
That's another thing. Balak saw, and that's why he thought he would win. But this explains why Zimri did what he did, because he knew that Cosby was the princess, daughter of Balak, who's the king of Moav. She has the energy of Moav inside of her. The spark of David HaMelech, he wanted to suck out of her then. And obviously it didn't work. Now, okay, so now we understand why Bilam is in Midian. Go back to the Rashi on the left-hand side. We're in the left-hand side, the second paragraph. V'ya in the second line. Midian, he went out from Midian to greet the Yidden. So Balak comes out of Midian with his suitcase full of cash. Bilam comes out of Midian with his suitcase full of cash. And he gives the Yidden bad eitzes. He tells them 12,000 soldiers. 12,000 soldiers in this week's parasha. When you guys were 600,000, what happened? They sent a few girls to the front line and you all caved. And now 12,000 of you want to come fight? That was the advice that Bilam gave. Says Rashi, Nosnu lo ischorem mishalem. They gave him his full reward. V'lo kipchu, they didn't hold back. In other words, they killed him. Now this Rashi is quoting from the Sifri. So the Sifri says, when was Bilam killed? It sounds like it was before the war. Bilam left Midian with the money in his hand, and he was a very happy man. And he happened to bump into the Yidden. When Rashi says he left towards the Yidden, I always understood that to mean he left Midian and he happened to be going in the direction of the Yidden. Some learn that Rashi means that he directed his steps towards the Yidden. He dafka went towards them. And he told them, back off. You're not going to win against Midian. So what did the Yidden do? They killed him. Now that sounds different than what Rashi said right before from the Tanchuma, that Bilam during the war fell down from the sky onto dead bodies. This sounds like a different story. They actually killed him beforehand. It could be a debate between the Tanchuma and the Sifri. It could be a debate. It's strange though that Rashi would quote one right after the other. If they go head to head and they don't fit one with the other, it's funny why Rashi would quote both. But nonetheless, that's the deal. Okay. So far we understand why Bilam was there. The shaila is, why was he killed? Why was he killed? For what crime did they pin him for? So let's see, what crimes did Bilam do? The fact that he tried to curse us didn't end up happening. All the curses were transformed into brachas. Although the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, from the brachas that he made, you can know what he had in mind to curse us. Because what happened was when Bilam spoke, he had in mind to curse, and when the words came out of his mouth, God flipped them into blessings. So from each blessing you can see exactly what he tried to curse us with. But that means in mind, he had in mind to curse. And those curses he had in mind all came true. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, each of the curses he had in mind all came true at one point, except for one. When he said Matov v'lechayankiv, he was saying that there's always going to be Bate Midrashis, there's always going to be shuls and places to learn. What he wanted to say was, there should cease being shuls and places to learn. God flipped it that there will always be, and this is the one curse that although he had in mind, it didn't come true. But everything else came true. So maybe Bilam ultimately was pinned for the curses that he had in mind, and ultimately they had an effect. Maybe it was that. Maybe it was the fact that he told Balak to get all the girls of Midian and Moav to seduce the Yidden. I mean, that's Gilei Arayos, right? Immoral acts. The only thing is, what was the immoral act? These were women. Were they married women? We don't know. For a guy, one of the 7 mitzvahs of a guy is not to have illicit relations. But
no
relationship out of marriage,
by
goyim themselves there is, because one of the arayis is for a guy. If Jack is married to Jill, Jim can't live with her. But if Jill is not married and they want to be together out of marriage, it's not a problem for a guy. And not just that, for a goyish woman to marry a Jewish man is not one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. There's a whole shaila when Pinchas killed Zimri and Cosby. What right did he have to kill Cosby? What did Cosby do wrong? She's a goyish woman with a Jewish man. That's not part of the Gilei Arayos of a guy.
They should know. The other woman shouldn't go with the guy.
It's not one of the 7. A guy can't be with an animal, or a man with a man with his mother, his sister. There's only a few. A Jewish woman, a goyish woman with a Jewish man isn't one of them. There's a whole shaila why Pinchas was allowed to kill her.
And why?
Why Taka? There's a Rambam. There's a There's a halach in the Rambam. I'm sorry, Pasha. I might lose my voice soon, and wherever we get to. You might be early. You might be lucky, and you'll be off the hook early this week. There's a Rambam in Hilchis Sisurei Bia. This Rambam was removed from text for hundreds of years. The Goyim removed it. The problem is that the Magid Mishnah on the side comments on this halach, and they didn't remove the Magid Mishnah. So therefore, it always remained. The Rambam says, when a Jewish man's with a Goyish woman, the Goyish woman gets killed. Just like if a Jewish man cohabits with an animal, or a Jewish woman with an animal, you kill the animal. What the animal do wrong? So the Gemara says, Kivan shebas takola al yada. Since through the animal was a stumbling block to the Jew, you kill the animal. So the Rambam says, so too for the Goyish woman and a Jewish man. Right? And she's worse than the animal because it was you're right, it was her decision. L'chayr, if she would be raped, it wouldn't apply. By the animals, even if it's raped. If it was a Jewish man and a Goyish woman raped, l'chayr, the halacha wouldn't apply. But it's only if she desired to it. But the source of it is the Rambam writes. And the truth is, it's actually from this week's story. By the war against Midian, the soldiers of the Jewish war kept the Midianite women alive. And Moshe said, how'd you keep them alive? These were the women that seduced the men. And all the women were killed. So the Rambam says this is the source. The fact that all the women were killed is a raya, a Goyish woman and a Jewish man. The Goyish woman gets killed. Now the one. Oh, so that's the shaila that good question. Many Rishonim ask on the Rambam, that's a horrible raya. You're going to prove from the story in this week that the women of Midian were killed because they were stumbling block from the men. All the women were killed, even those that actually didn't cohabit. So how is that a proof at all? Good question. So others prove it from the animal, the fact that it's a behema ta'aroigu. But either way, going back to Bilam's advice. By the way, there's a whole Rogachover about this, about Pinchas killing Zimri and Cosby. If the reason he killed Zimri was why? Because if a Jew has an illicit relationship with a Goyish woman publicly, then there's a din of kanoim poigim by the zealot can kill the man who's doing the relations. But he can only kill him while the man's involved in the act. Once Zimri would have separated himself from Cosby, Pinchas has no right to attack. But the woman is killed for a different reason. She's killed like an animal is killed. When the animal is killed, it's even after the man has stopped sodomizing the animal. So therefore, Cosby's din of dying is different than Zimri. Zimri could only be killed during the act. That's the din of kanoim poigim boy, that Pinchas the zealot can kill. But the woman Cosby is killed for a different halacha. Because you kill an animal or a goyish woman that was a stumbling block for a man. That halacha is even after the act. And the Rogachover says that's why in the beginning of Pinchas it says, the man that was killed was Zimri, asher huka es hamidyanis. He was killed with the midyanis. But when we speak about Cosby the midyanis, we don't say she was killed with him. The Rogachover says why? Because he can only be killed when he's with her. She can be killed even when she's detached from him, even after the fact. Because there's two different halachas going on between him and her. And he sees that in the wording of the psukim. But getting back to our discussion, what did Zimri... Bilam's advice that the Goyish women should be with the Jewish men, for a guy, it's not one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. So to say that was his crime, that was Bilam's crime, he caused all of those averas, for him it's not an avera. On the guy's side, it's not really an avera. It's not one of the 7 mitzvahs. Cosby got killed because we compare it to an animal, but it doesn't mean it was prohibited for her. It's not one of the 7 mitzvahs b'nei Noach. Maybe you'll say it's because Bilam got the Jews to serve all those idols, right? Because all the women, the princesses of Moab, said, you want to do something, you got to serve the idols.
They weren't married?
We don't know that they were.
Cosby wasn't...
How would it doesn't say.
We don't know that she was married. So you could say maybe it was the Avodah Zarah, he caused all the Yidden, all the Pa'er, right? Maybe it was that. Maybe it was the fact that he caused so many Yidden to die. 200,000 Yidden he caused to die. Maybe that's his sin. Maybe that's his crime. So far we have the cursors, which ultimately he did implement. The fact he caused thousands of Yidden into immorality, to do Averis. The fact he caused so many to serve idols. The fact that he caused the death of 200,000 people. Which one? Which one? All of them. He was a mechashev too. He did sorcery. But what's funny is that Rashi quotes from the Sifri that Bilam gave bad advice to what we just saw. When he came out of Minyan with a suitcase of cash, he told the Yidden, you're going to go fight? You're going to lose the war. Why does Rashi even quote that Sifri? Rashi explains why Bilam was there. He went to get his money. Okay, that's important to know for the pshat of the psukim, why Bilam was there. But why does Rashi quote this next part of the story? You should know, on his way out of Midian, he met the Yidden, and he told them, as if you're going to win. He tried to convince them out of it, and they responded and killed him. Why is Rashi saying that? All that does is raise issues that it seems to conflict the medrash he quoted before, that Bilam died during the war. It doesn't help us. That little part of the story is not helpful. It's only damaging. It doesn't help us at all to know that after he got his cash, he decided to go towards the Yidden and convince them out of the war. The Yidden didn't take his advice and they killed him fakert. Why is that important to know? So, the big Mefarshim on Rashi, we're going to quote the Maharal. The Maharal learns fakert. This was the crime Bilam was killed for. And it was the only crime he was killed for. You know why Bilam was killed? Because of this tail end of the story. Because he told the Yidden, you think you're going to win against Midian? When you were 600,000, you fell prey to their daughters, and now you're coming with 12,000? That was his crime. Strangest thing. That you're pinning him for that? So look on the right hand side again, on back to the Sifsei Chachamim, right under the pasuk, where there's a little aleph, a big word de'im. The Sifsei Chachamim says like this: de'im loikein, if not for this tail end of the story, echargu, how did they kill Bilam? He's not a Midyani. Why were they authorized to kill him? So the Einlamer, don't tell me, mishum shebesibasei chatu. Maybe it's because all the sins they did in the end of Parshas Balak were because of him. Says the Sifsei Chachamim, and he's actually quoting Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, the famous commentator on Rashi. In Turkey, in the end of the 1400s, the Mizrahi wrote a beautiful commentary on the entire Pirush of Rashi. And he always defends Rashi from the attacks of the Ramban. Apparently Rashi came to him in a dream and thanked him. Somebody actually came to the Chassam Sofer and asked him, I want to learn one sefer that will give me knowledge of the entire Torah. And he said, learn the Mizrahi's commentary on the whole Chumash. Because in every Rashi, whether it's Medrash, whether it's Halacha, he has a whole discussion. Gemaras, Rambams, there's Pilpul, there's everything there. Anyhow, so this is a comment from the Mizrahi. Says the Mizrahi, don't tell me they killed Bilam because of what happened at the end of Balak. He caused us to sin with idols and with women. Shariheim lo yaduze. The Yidden didn't know that. Ad shuvam until after the war. Because when they came back from the war and they kept all the women alive, Moshe became angry and Moshe screamed, you left all those girls alive? Moshe said, hey no hayul b'nei Yisrael. They were b'dvar Bilam. These were the girls. And it was Bilam's idea. It's mashma, says the Mizrahi, the Yidden weren't aware of that. It sounds like Moshe is giving them a news flash. These girls were, this was Bilam's advice. This was Bilam's big idea. It sounds like it was a news flash. But so then before then, how did they kill him? Based on what right? It must be because of his bad advice. But it's not stam bad advice. He told them to rebel against God. The Eibusha said, go fight Midian, and Bilam said, don't. Bilam was telling the masses to rebel against God. That's why he was killed. That's why he was killed. He's like a masus, exactly, which is very important, we'll see. That's why he was killed. So it's so ironic, from all the crimes Bilam did, the one thing he was pinned for was stam, a little vert that he said, which had absolutely no effect. He just tried to dissuade us from leading the war, and boom.
200,000.
24,000 by the plague, 170,000 in Jewish courts. In the end of Balak, when with the daughters of Midian and Moav, when they worshipped idols and they had immoral relations. And that was all Bilam's doing.
How was it a din modest because he told someone not to fight?
It's not about not fighting. He told them to rebel the command of God. The Eibusha said fight.
And where's the tzivui from the 7 mitzvahs been enough?
So it would be like Avodah Zarah. It's fighting against God. Getting the masses to rebel against the Eibusha is tantamount to...
Not getting, suggesting.
It
It didn't even work.
No, but... And Maces... A mesis in halach, if someone seduces and convinces someone to worship idols, it doesn't have to be successful.
It didn't even work.
Yeah, but the law by mesis is, if Reuven, God forbid, tries to convince Shimon to worship idols,
Doesn't Shimon have to do it?
no, fakir, Shimon himself can be the witness to testify against Reuven. It doesn't have to be successful. It's the hasasa, the seduction itself is the crime. So that's what the Mizrahi says. But according to the Mizrahi, what comes out? Had the Yidden known that Bilam was responsible for the end of Balak, for the znus with the daughters of Midian and Moav, for the idol worship, would they have pinned him for that. They didn't know about it. And therefore he was pinned for something else. That is what the Mizrahi says. Look at the Maharal underneath. There's a long paragraph. Starts V'yotza Midian. This is a Maharal in the Sefer Gur Aryeh. Says the Maharal, Bilam left Midian likrasam. He says, Ilu loy halach, if he didn't go from Midian to greet them, they wouldn't kill him, because they weren't commanded mipi Moshe Rabbam. Shari loy omer le Moshe shiagris Bilam. Moshe never told anyone to kill Bilam. It wasn't on the cards, it wasn't on the agenda. If it was Ratzon Moshe shiahargu as Bilam b'mulcham Midyanim, if Moshe wanted Bilam should be killed in the war with the Midyanim, ain't Suffolk, there's no doubt, says the Maharal, Moshe would have told them to kill Bilam. If Moshe wanted it, he would have said it. If he didn't say it, it means it's not on the cards. No. So therefore Rashi's bothered, how did the Jews kill Bilam? They weren't told to. Therefore he says, Bilam wasn't doing a crime at this time. Therefore he says he left Midian to greet them. And he gave them the Eitzah Ra. So says the Maharal, you know what happened? Similar to the Mizrahi, now they have reason to kill him. Why? Because he was a Reidif. He was trying to kill the Yidden. Why? Because he was trying to deflate them and say, you guys are going to lose the war. Anyone that brings soft-heartedness, weakness of heart, right, into war, he causes that they should. He's going to cause them to run, and then the enemy pursues you until he kills you. You'll be killed. The Bayrech will be killed. So Bilam was putting all these 12,000 soldiers, their lives in jeopardy. They'll be afraid, they'll turn around, and the kings of Midian will quickly swoop on and kill them. They said they're going to kill him. What they did now. So the Maharal's saying like this: it could be Bilam was chayiv misa for all the things he did before, but Moshe never told them to do it. My understanding of the Maharal is every Yid could have made a cheshbon, Bilam deserves to die, but until you hear from Moshe, you have no right to do it. But at this point, there was a new equation. Right now, Bilam is causing, if you let him speak any longer, who knows what he's going to do? Every word that he says is causing peril to the soldiers at war. He's a roidif. When there's a roidif, you don't make any cheshbonis, you knock off the guy. That's what the Maharal says. Exactly, yeah.
So halacha, the Reidif.
You kill, sure.
Yeah, but being rodef is a complicated thing.
Yeah, by a guy.
No, by a Jew.
No, there's a mitzvah. If you see Reuven running after Shimon to kill Shimon, there's a mitzvah for you to kill Reuven. And for sure, self-defense. Each Jew of it's also self-defense. If I let this guy talk anymore, I will be disheartened from the war. I'll turn around, and then they're going to pursue me and kill me. By self-defense, we once had a shir last year at Parshas Pinchas. It was a beautiful shir. There were about 3 people there about the differences of self-defense versus Reidif. Reidif, usually you're a third person, right? Reuven's running to kill Shimon. Reuven is a Reidif. Shimon is a Nirdif. There's the pursuee, Shimon. There's the pursuer, Reuven. And then there's you, the onlooker. You're the matzah. You're the savior. Whereas by self-defense, only 2 people. And there's many different halachic ramifications. According to the Rivash, when you're a regular Reidif, the third person has to shout a warning. Tell Reuven, if you continue to run after Shimon, I'll kill you. But by self-defense, he says no warning's necessary. You could just turn around and kill the guy. And there's many other halachic ramifications. What? Right. And he warned him, even though he didn't have to. Or maybe that's a source you do have to warn. Okay. Says the Maharal, va'oid another pshat, im loy hoya yoytzel likrasa, if Bilam wouldn't have come to them, hoyolem lareg midyonim, they would have killed the Midianites. Sha'aleim nitztava, that was the command. Avaloi bilam, but not bilam. Shaloi nitztava, because there was no command. Aval achshav, but now shu hoyam asiyam eitzaro is giving them bad advice. B'mulchama, zois, in this very war. You see, what happened was, says in my round the second shot, Bilam made himself part of the war. He made himself part of the enemy. By supporting the enemy, and he became part of the war. He shot himself in the leg. Din hu shihar, he should be killed with them. Since he was against the war, bimavato the war, the Yidden were commanded by God to fight the war, so therefore he made himself, he put himself on the enemy's team. That's the second pshat of the Maharal. So the Maharal's both pshatim, similar to the Mizrahi is, Bilam was killed because of this bad advice. And that's why Rashi quotes it. Rashi quotes his tail end of the story because it's key. It's why Bilam was killed. The Mizrahi says he became like a masis to seduce them to rebel against God by not fulfilling the command. The Maharal says either he was a roidif, or he put himself, he aligned himself and he associated himself with the other sides. He's part of the enemy. He made himself the enemy. Fine. So it's fascinating. According to all this, Bilam was killed mamash on like for a technicality, you know? His major crimes were, so to speak, overlooked. Okay. Here's where it gets interesting. Go to the right side of the page, the third piece. It's a piece of Gemara in Masechta Sanhedrin. It says the following. It says, Bilam ben Be'er, the sorcerer, Hargu b'nei Yisrael killed, Becher with the sword, El Chalaleim onto the dead bodies. This is a pasuk in Yeshua. Rashi on the top left side quoted it, because he wanted to show that Bilam also fell from the sky onto the dead bodies. But it seems like he didn't die from the fall, because the pasuk says he was killed by the sword. But back to the Gemara, we're in the Gemara. We're on the right-hand side, third piece. Amar Rav, said Rav, Kimu boy arba misses. The Yidden gave him all 4 death penalties of the court. Skilla, they stoned him. Sreifa, they burned him. Hereg, they chopped off his head. Chenek, they strangled him. Look at Rashi underneath. Now here's a very important debate. Rashi underneath says, Hargu el Chalaleim. When it says they killed Bilam onto the dead bodies, says Rashi, Missus Harbe, mashma. It's mashma, many deaths. Tolu, first they hanged him. So they put a noose around his neck. But he wasn't dead yet. They hanged him. He was standing on wood, let's say. Vitzitzu eish tachas hatzliva, underneath the area where he was hanged, there was a fire. V'choschu roishay, so they cut off his head, and then he fell, right? Because no longer is he attached to the rope. His head's attached to the rope, but he's not attached to his head. So v'choschu v'nafal l'toicha eish, he fell to the fire. So they did everything. Says Rashi, Tliya hainu chenek. The hanging with the noose is the strangulation. That's chenek. Chatichas haroish, cutting off the head, that's hereg. Whenever Bezin gives hereg, it's slicing off the neck. Kishanafal la'aretz, when he fell, is skilla. Why? Because when you stone someone, you throw him off, and then you chuck the stones. So his falling was the skilla. And obviously, Kishanafal, when he fell into the fire, is shreifa. So first, it's very important, the order. Rashi says he got chenek, but he didn't die from the chenek. It sounds like he died from when they sliced off his head, right? They tied his neck, but it takes however long it. Usually, if you're standing on a platform and your noose is in the neck, when they knock off the platform, often you would die from breaking your neck. But here that didn't happen. They chopped off his neck. It sounds like he died from the hereg. So he had chenek, but he died from the hereg. He fell as the skillet, then he was burnt in the fire as the shreifa. Rab Meir Halevi Abulifia, the Yad Rameh, one of the great Rishonim, he lived in Spain, in Toledo, in the times of the Rambam. He was actually one of the first antagonists against the Rambam. He says the Rambam, no, not that we know. He says the Rambam wrote the Mishnah Torah. He says, I don't know if there's aim lemikra or aim lemasiris, which means if you have a word and there's the way you read it off the bat, but there's often a tradition that you actually read it differently. So he said, I'm not sure, do you read it Mishnah Torah or Meshana Torah? Yeah, he wrote letters. He was very upset that the Rambam didn't speak about Tchias HaMesim.
In English, not a synonym or no? Synonym?
No, it's a play on words.
Like time and time, the spice and the
Yeah.
No, but here, because there's no Nukudis, you could...
Who was the fire again? Who was it?
Rav Meir Halevi Abulifia. And he was a Rav in Toledo, and he actually wrote letters to the Baalei HaTosfos in France against the Rambam. The Rambam doesn't speak about Tchias HaMesim. The Rambam doesn't bring sources for his halachas and lots of issues. But anyhow, he was a great man, and he wrote a very important commentary on Sanhedrin called the Yad Rama, or the Yad Rameh. And in it, he has a shaila on Rashi. He says, once they chopped off his head, what was the point of the skill and the sreifa? He's dead. He's dead. He's not going to feel the pain. So the Yad Rameh therefore says they did it all at the same time. The Rameh says like this. They had two people holding a handkerchief around his neck. That's how they do chenek. They had one guy holding the mouth open about to pour in the hot lead as sreifa. One guy holding a sword, and I guess they were throwing him off the roof. And they did it all at the same time. Instantaneously, they did all four at the same time.
Is that possible?
That's what he says. Imagine it. Try and imagine it.
Why?
It has to be, he says, or else what was the purpose of the sreifa and the skilla after he died?
It's like in Russia, they kill them, they commit suicide by shooting themselves in the head. Why?
Well, now, hold on. But where does Rav know this from? He doesn't quote the pasuk in our parsha which says, Bilam ben Ba'or, they killed by the sword. No. He quotes it from the pasuk in Yeshua that says, the beginning is Bilam ben Ba'or, the sorcerer, Bnei Yisrael killed, El Chalaleim. In fact, the Rashi we just saw, the Dibra Mask is Hargu El Chalaleim. It's from those words that we learn out, because Chalaleim means dead bodies. We're saying we killed Bilam in the way we kill many people. And the Marshar explains, there are 4 ways that Bezin kills people. Those 4 ways is the way Bilam died. It's from the words Al Chalaleim. So Bilam was killed all 4.
Also, Hargu, multiple people.
Okay, well, it's from the words El Chalaleim. Now go back to the Gemara right above. Amar, the 3rd line, a certain min said to Rabbi Chanina, Mishmit, did you ever hear Bilam? How old was Bilam when he died? Amarle, he says, Michtav loiks, it doesn't say anywhere. Elam but it says the following. It says, Anshe domim umirma lo yechsu yemeyem, men of blood and of falsehood won't live half a life. And a life is 70 years, so it means less than 35. He was either 33 or 34. Not sure. So the Apikers, Amarle, Shaprika Amr, Shitaka right. Lididi Chazir, I saw Pinkasei de Bilam, I saw Bilam's diary, or a diary about Bilam, and it said, Bar Tlosin v'Tlashnin, Bilam was 33, Chagira, the crippled, Bilam Nebuch, the cripple, was 33 years old, Kad Kotel Yosei Pinchas Lista, when Pinchas the bandit killed him. This is like classic CNN news, right? Nebuch, Bilam, the lame, was a 33-year-old guy, a young man. He's a young man, he's a young guy. Nebuch, he's a lame guy, can't walk. And Bilam, that was thirsty for blood, came and killed him. It's unbelievable. It's a piece of Gemara. Look at Rashi, look at the bottom of the page now. The bottom is a Rashi. Kad Kotel, when Pinchas the lister killed him, says Rashi, Sarz or Pinchas was the general. Even Kotle, even if someone else killed him, the whole Mucham is called on the name of Pinchas. So Rashi says, I don't know that Pinchas actually killed him. Could be somebody else. But Pinchas gets the credit because it was his arm. Now, if you remember, last year we had a shir that it was Dafka Pinchas, because Pinchas had the Targum Yonis and Ben Uzziel, and Pinchas had to fly in the sky, and he caught up to Bilam and he brought him down to the ground, and he took out so exactly. Yeah, we saw the Zohar too. Okay, but So hold on a second. How does this help us? They killed him 4 ways. If they killed him in 4 ways,
But there's no such thing, Rabbi. You understand?
What?
Once a person, the life
That's
stops.
the Yad Rameh's Kash on Rashi. So that's what the Yad Rameh says. They did all 4 B'otozman. He describes.
The cause of death has to be one.
He felt the pain.
Because of that. When you do tahara, they bring the death
He felt the knife He felt the knife starting to cut and the lead going down his throat at the same time. He felt them both.
And they hang him and they burn him.
No, that was Rashi. Forget. Rashi holds that his head was sliced off before he hit the fire. Then you have a shaila. According to the Ad Rameh, the fire came before his head was fully sliced off. Oh, why was it important? So, the Marsha says that he was chayiv all 4 deaths. The Marsha says that Bilam was chayiv all 4 death penalties. Like he's chayiv all 4. For which crime? Billions of crimes. All 4 death penalties. Therefore, they gave him all 4. So many ask on the Marsha, a guy doesn't get 4 deaths are for Jews. A guy, even if a guy gets killed in a Jewish court, it's always herek. It's always by the... Yeah. So they ask in the Mashor, what are you doing with 4 deaths? It's not chayiv in 4 deaths. So the truth is, according to Rashi, what killed Bilam? It was the herek that killed him. So Rashi's way actually fits good with the Mashor, that he was chayiv 4 deaths, but not mamish. He's really going to get killed like a guy, the herek. But we threw in the other deaths just to add it, because he deserved it. But Taki was only killed with the herek. According to the Ad Rameh, it was all 4 at the same time. It's a whole different story. It's interesting. According to Rashi, it was Taka the herek that killed him, because halachically by a goy they get killed by herek. Okay, so hold on. So where are we going with all this? We're going to see. Please turn to the next page. So Rabbi Chanina wasn't sure if Bilam was 33 or 34. What do you think his question was? Look on the next page, on the right-hand side, the second piece. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, the Gemara in Sanhedrin. Doeg and Achitophel, these 2 famous fellows, never saw each other. Doeg was in the days of Shaul, and he was held accountable for the killing of the city of Noiv, all the Kohanim in that city. But Doeg was well acquainted with David, and he was not a fan of David. So too was Achitophel, but Achitophel never saw Doeg. Achitophel was at the end of David's life. He made David. V'amar Rabbi Yochanan, Doeg v'Achitophel lo chotzim meim, neither of them reached 35. We also learned in a brayse, Anshe Domim, men of blood and falsehood won't reach half of their life. Kol Shnoisev of Doeg is only 34. Achitophel was 33. Interesting. Achitophel was 33, Doeg 34. The Marsha says, the Pasuk says, Anshe David's talking about his enemies, men of blood and mirma. Who was the man of blood? Doeg. He killed all the Kohanim. Who was the man of deceit? Achitophel. What did Achitophel do? He gave Avshalom the advice to live with the concubines, the concubines of his father. Achitophel told Avshalom during the rebellion, live openly with your father's concubines, so people will see that you now hold yourself as king.
It was while David was alive.
Yeah, sure. So that was a rebellion. So Achitophel gave advice for promiscuity, for znus, and Doeg was a man of blood. So Doeg is the man of domim, Achitophel is mirma. Now who died earlier? Achitophel died at 33. Doeg died at 34. Which means if you get pinned for mirma, for bad advice, 33. If you get pinned for blood, 34. So when Rabbi Chanina said, I don't know if Bilam was 33 or 34, in the Gemara we saw, what was Rabbi Chanina's shaila? So I don't know what crime Bilam's getting pinned for. This I never saw this anywhere, but I think it makes a lot of sense that putting the 2 Gemaras together, that he wasn't sure what was Bilam's crime. He wasn't sure what Bilam's crime was. If it's for the fact he caused the Yidden to do znus like Achitophel, or even the mirma for the Avodah Zarah, 33. But maybe he's not blamed for that. Maybe the Yidden are blamed for that themselves. But his, me, you got a problem? Me. But if we're pinning him for the fact that he caused the death of 200,000 people, or for the fact, like the Maharal says, he was about to cause the death of these 12,000 people at the war, then he would have been 34.
But I thought Doeg lived till the end of David's life.
No.
When did Doeg die?
He came because David was a king for 40 years.
Yeah.
Doeg kills the city of Noiv when Shaul's still alive.
Right.
And Doeg only lives for 34 years.
Where do we know know that.
The Gemara just said this is it's a
No,
brisa.
that's not-
No, it's not in the psukim. No.
But it's a definite. It's not like a.
Yeah, Doeg's not mentioned in the Nach. Once David's deep in his kingdom, is in Malchus, Doeg doesn't get a name.
Whether Bilam was 33, like some people say it can't be.
No, but I just showed you a Gemara that says that we know Doeg was 34, we know Achitophel was 33. It's a tradition. Anyhow, so I'm just throwing that in that I think even Rabbi Chanina was unsure what Bilam's crime was. You're asking who says it? Nobody says it. But Rabbi Chanina clearly said he doesn't know 33 or 34.
No,
I'm saying once you know this, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
The Shailah is it because of the Domim or because of the Mirma?
Also, it can be that he did the offense at 33 and died right away, and the other one did the offense at 34 and died right away.
No.
We don't know when the crime was done.
They did it much before. They did it for a whole bunch of years. Before
Were they killed or?
Okay, it's true. Achitophel killed himself right
after.
Yeah, exactly. Because
What do you mean, right after?
right after, during-
was still alive for a
a little
while.
bit. Yeah.
So Achitophel-
Okay, fine. Granted.
Achitophel also didn't get a punishment from Hashem. He took his own life.
He lost his Ein Lo Chelek L'Olam Haba.
Right, because he killed himself.
Not everyone that kills themselves uses Olam Haba. It was because he had a vendetta against David. Achitophel was the grandfather, even though he was a young man. The Gemara says in those days, at 7 years old, 9 years old, they had kids. Achitophel was the grandfather of Bathsheba. Bathsheba was married to Uriah Hachiti, and David caused the death of Uriah.
He sent him to the war.
Yeah, so and Achitophel knew the whole story. Achitophel felt that David killed his grandson. And therefore, when Avshalom wanted to rebel against his father David, Achitophel was very happy, and he drew under Bas Mitzvah.
She took a shower.
Okay, so where are we going with this? So we're going to see. So we said there's a big debate between the Rogachover and the Vilna Gaon. So first of all, the yachas that we have to the Rogachover is very special. Look on the second page, the right-hand side at the bottom. An interesting story the Rebbe writes in his Rishimis that actually negated this week's parsha, Matos Maseh. When you say chazak, v'nis chazek, does the guy that gets the aliyah, does he say the words? So the Frierdiker Rebbe says yeah. And we're on the second page, the right-hand side, on the bottom piece, lahaschel sefer chod. The Frierdiker Rebbe says that when you know why you say chazak? To continue learning, let's go on to the next sefer. So the Rebbe says, Al Shalose, I asked the Shaila, wait a second. If the reason you're saying chazak is you should be strengthened to continue learning in the future, how could the guy that gets the aliyah say chazak between the last word of the parsha and his bracha? Asher nasan lana Torah say hefsek. After you finish your aliyah, you got a bench on the aliyah. Asher nasan lana Torah emes. You're busy saying chazak that we should learn future chumashim. That has no relation to what you're reading now. You got to say the bracha. So the Rebbe asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, "Im kein eina shayach la'kriya." If it's just that we should be strengthened to continue learning another sefer, it has nothing to do with what you just read. The eina, you can't compare it la'aisi melech, to bring salt. If you make a hamaitzi and before you eat the bread you say bring salt, you don't have to make a new hamaitzi. Because the asking for the salt is connected to the bracha and what you made the bracha on.
So you have to say,
No, you're right. But if you say bring the salt, zelo hefsek. Lo hefsek. But over here, fragt the Rebbe, v'tzorchli is hefsek. But by the al, you should know in the Litvische Welt, the guy that gets the aliyah doesn't say chazak. In Lubavitch we do it. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, Anna, he answered me. Kol ha-Torah shmoyz l'Kadosh Baruch Hu. The whole Torah is God's names. And the Frierdiker Rebbe tells the Rebbe, don't you know the Rogachover? Ha-Rogachover haya omer. The Rogachover would say, beis de Bereshis and lamed de Yisrael ein vart. From the beis of Bereshis to the lamed, the last word of the Chumash, it's all one word. Alangevart. It's a long word. Yeah, he's quoting to the Rebbe from the Rogachover. Alangevart, me'ein shoifer shel Mashiach. The Rogachover is like the shoifer of Mashiach. When Mashiach's going to come, it's going to be one long blast. In fact, Alter Rebbe says in a Maimer that when we blow after Yom Kippur, the one blow, it's like the blow of Mashiach, one blast. So the Rogachover said that the whole Torah in essence is one long blast. So what's the Frierdiker Rebbe's answer? So therefore, when you finish the last aliyah of Maseh, and you say, the guy getting this says, Chazak, let's learn Dvarim, it's not a hefsek. Because Dvarim, the end of Maseh, is one sentence. So you're not talking about something random. It's all interconnected, so it's not a hefsek.
Does he say it twice, or does he say it only?
Chazak, no, just once.
Does he say it with the Shliach Tzibur, or the Balkei, or does he say it with everyone else?
Choshev everybody else.
Huh?
Either or.
Oh.
Ask those that are zoicha to get those aliyahs. The Inyan Amir Chazal, he says, "Haben sie gekocht Marshal Ramah." Fine. Okay. So it's an incredible thing that the Frierdiker Rebbe quoted to the Rebbe. The Rogachover, we know, was a Chabad Chassid. He himself. No, fakert. That was the answer.
That was the answer.
That was the Rebbe accepted the answer. This is what the Rebbe writes in his Rishimus, in his diary. The Rogachover was born. His father was a Chassid at Tzemach Tzedek. The Rogachover went to the Tzemach Tzedek as a kid. He got a bracha from him. The Rogachover was a proud Chabad Chassid. In fact, he once said something a little sharp about the Tzemach Tzedek. And someone said, how could you say that? You're doch a Chabad Chassid. He said, I'm not talking about the Lubavitch Tzemach Tzedek. I'm talking about there was a Tzemach Tzedek lived 400 years ago. Menachem Mendel Kruchmal was one of the big poskim in the 1600s. I'm talking about that Tzemach Tzedek, not the Tzemach Tzedek of Lubavitch. Wouldn't say that.
But he didn't respond to Malach Chabad Chassid.
What?
No, he didn't.
His response was that I'm not associated with Chabad.
No, he definitely was. In fact, somebody once told him the Mittel, the Alter Rebbe, was a big Gaon in Nigla. The Mittel Rebbe, we have nothing from him in Nigla, only in Chassidus. And the Rogachover said, if you learn the Mittel Rebbe's farm in Chassidus, you'll see how great he was in Nigla. He said that clear. When the Rebbe Rashab passed away, the Rogachover wrote a letter. And he says, the Gemara says the passing of a tzaddik is like the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. The destruction of the Beis HaMikdash wasn't a one-time event. It's constant, because the Yerushalmi says every generation that it's not built, it's like it's destroyed. And the Rogachover says it's as if right now, every moment is a continuous destruction. And the Rogachover is so too when a tzaddik dies. The fact that the Gemara equates the two means every moment that tzaddik's not alive means just like he passed away now. That's what he said about the Rebbe Rashab. Every moment is not here. It's like he just passed away now. It keeps on happening.
Brings it Beis Thomas for Brandon. Dalad or Memhain? I'm not sure.
The Rogachover.
Yeah,
about the Beis HaMikdash. Right. The Rogachover here said about the passing of the Rebbe Rashab.
Yeah.
What? Say that again. Oh, I don't know. Could have been. He had a nephew that learned in Tem Chetzmim. Could have been to him. I don't remember who the letter was sent to. Anyhow, so we're big fans of the Rogachover. It's funny in the Litvische world they don't look at him the same way we do.
They don't quote Chabad the way that you quote Gaon in Vilna. I can promise you that.
Even the Rogachover, they don't.
You won't find a Chabad
They say,
in a Litvish shul.
Well, you should know that every time the Litvishers hear that we quote them, they get a step closer to quoting us. I once spent Pesach with the Litvisher family in Orlando about 10 years ago. And the whole Pesach, we had shiurim with each other and this and that. And one of them is a guy in Lakewood learning in Koilel for 40 years. White beard, still schwer, still supporting him. You know, Imamish has the life. And he told me when we finished that until that point, he thought in Lubavitch we hold Sidurim upside down. And he said, while he was there, I was quoting to him the same things he's learning, you know. I was quoting to him all his Litvish Sfarim. And he's like, wow, you know, now that I see it, I see all the rumors I heard are all false. So every time that happens, I get a step closer to quoting.
Black sheep, right?
What? Yeah. No, I said, yeah, I'm a janitor. I said, I'm nothing. I'm just a... I'm sure there are. Yeah, how many? I don't know. I'm sure there are. Okay. Now, okay, fine. Let's just... One day we'll have a shir about the life and times of the Rogachover. The Litvishers quote a tradition from Reb Chaim Brisker, which they say Reb Chaim Brisker, who was actually a chavrus of the Rogachover when they were both younger. Reb Chaim was 5 years older than him, but apparently they learned together in Reb Chaim's father's yeshiva, the Beis Halevi's yeshiva, in the early days. Apparently Reb Chaim Brisker later in life said, the Rogachover sometimes quotes 20 proofs for an idea. He said, It's because the Rogachover is not sure which one is the precise proof, so he quotes all 20. And amongst the 20, you have the right one. But the Litvishers quote this as if to mock. As if to mock. And it's not Chaim Brisker's derech to mock at all. So I don't know exactly what he said or the tone how he said it, but I've heard Litvishers quote it, and it's horrific because in the Rebbe's eyes, the Rogachover was greater than anyone in his generation, not just his, but for many generations.
Our Rebbe's eyes?
Yeah, for sure. It's not, the Rebbe had a whole sikha where he spoke, the Rebbe said like this, the Rogachover, his frumkeit, he was very frum, but there were many frum people. But the Rebbe said his oifen of learning was be'ein aroich, from everyone in the generation, except for maybe Yosef Engel, the Rebbe compared the two. Yeah, the Rebbe once said that as well, yeah. So that's the Rogachover. Now you also have the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon, the times of the Alter Rebbe, the relationship of the Bavitch to the Vilna Gaon is it's unclear. There are different fractions amongst the Bavitch of how to look at him. The Tzemach Tzedek Chassidim, I've seen some of their tshuvas of the Rabbonim of those times quote the Vilna Gaon with lots of respect. For example, the minig not to bring trees into the shul on Shavuos. There was a minig to bring trees in the shul on Shavuos, because on Shavuos we're judged on the fruit, so you bring the trees in to remind us. And the Vilna Gaon abolished the minig because the Goyim, the Christians, bring trees in their houses. And the Tzemach Tzedek Chassidim, they accepted this decree of the Vilna Gaon. Look on the top left side of the page. This is a scary story. I threw it in just for, this is also from the Rebbe's Rishima. It's a small story. The Alter Rebbe, it happened in the year 1782 roughly, 10 years after the Maggid passed away. The Alter Rebbe was visited by two of his friends, Yisrael Palotzker and Shlomo Kaliner, whose yahrzeit was yesterday. And the Alter Rebbe said like this, 10 Polish Rabbeim gathered together to put a cherem on the Vilna Gaon, because the Vilna Gaon had encouraged his Chassidim to harass the Chassidim. The Vilna Gaon had encouraged his students to harass the Chassidim to a horrible point, violence, destruction, etc. Now, they were afraid the Alter Rebbe wouldn't agree to this, so the Alter Rebbe's friends hid this whole plot from him. They did it themselves. They made a question from heaven. They received a response that if they want to put the Vilna Gaon in cherem, they need to have someone as great as the Vilna Gaon in learning. And they didn't have it amongst their 10. As great as they were, they needed one person in the minyan to be great, at least like the Vilna Gaon. So they had to travel to the Alter Rebbe, the only one. He was the only one. Rabbi Yisrael Palotzker and Shlomo Kaliner went to the Alter Rebbe to persuade him that he should join the minyan. The Alter Rebbe answered Shlomo Kaliner like this: when you put a cherem on someone, you cut off the soul. The true chayas of a Jewish person is from the chaya and yechida, the higher elements of the soul. If you put a cherem, you cut the person off, and the person cherem will become a kafir, a non-believer. Could you imagine if the Vilna Gaon would go fry? Could you imagine the effect it would have? I can't agree, because look at the Chil Hashem that will happen. Now the story there says that Shlomo Kaliner cursed the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe's little son Moshe was there, and the curse was on the boy, and the Alter Rebbe's son Moshe had a very difficult life, and these are all things discussed elsewhere. Al Koponim, but what do you see from here? Aside from the Alter Rebbe, there was no one as great as the Vilna Gaon in learning. And you should know that Reb Chaim Volozhner, the Vilna Gaon student, says when the Vilna Gaon, when he was about 30 years old, he almost stopped learning Nigla. His main thing was Kabbalah for the rest of his life. Kabbalah, Kabbalah, Kabbalah. In fact, the Alter Rebbe once said, I'm not afraid of the Vilna Gaon in Nigla, I'm afraid of him in Kabbalah. That was so he was big stuff. I'll just tell you one thing, a positive thing. The Friedrich Rebbe writes in Hatomim that when the Alter Rebbe was a young man, he heard about how great the Vilna Gaon was 25 years older than the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe traveled to Vilna incognito, and there were a few shilas that he wanted to pepper the Vilna Gaon with, big kashas, but he didn't want to speak to him face to face. He knew the Vilna Gaon would uncover his identity. So Alter Rebbe chose a fitting middleman. He told him the information. Go ask the Vilna Gaon. The guy went. He came back. When he told the Alter Rebbe the response, the Alter Rebbe says in the Friedrich Rebbe's words, the Alter Rebbe said, "Now I knew, Ato Yadaiti. Now I knew who I'm dealing with, and how great he was in Torah." Until then, it was all hearsay. The Alter Rebbe says, "Now when I heard his responses, now I knew how great this man was." So the Vilna Gaon was obviously incredible stuff.
The whole thing was his Talmudim told him false things. That's why
Okay. But the Alter Rebbe felt the Vilna Gaon didn't do his due investigation, etc. And there's many stories about this.
The Alter Rebbe went when he was young.
Okay?
Not when there was the whole...
Therefore what? What's the problem?
He said he didn't want to confront the wife.
The Alter Rebbe was a already famous person then. Why?
Then when he was 18.
No, we don't know how. It doesn't say he was 18 when he went. The Alter Rebbe was 18. He came to the Maggid. So this could have been a couple of years later. Anyhow, what was the Rogachover's relationship to the Vilna Gaon? That's an interesting question. Because the Rogachover, anyone in his generation, the Rogachover passes away in 1936, right before the Holocaust. Anyone in his generation, he had no time for it, no patience. There was once a guy who came to the Rogachover. The Rogachover was kind and pleasant towards him. And the fellow asked the Rogachover, "I heard you're sharp when Talmidei Chacham come to meet you." He says, "Yeah, it's true."
My father spent weeks with him, day and night.
And he's very tired of his father, not in Vienna, somewhere else. In Vienna. They were all in Vienna, okay. Rogachover was in Vienna by the doctors.
His grandfather?
His father.
This story was with his father, the guy that came?
No. You should know there was an old guy in Chicago who used to say, "You know who I am? The Rogachover called me an Amoritz. Ich bin der Rogachover's Amoritz." So the Rogachover had no patience for anyone of his time. There were a few exceptions, but pretty much. And what about the people from before? The Rogachover once said there were only two people who really understood the depth of what the Bali HaGemara wanted. The Rambam and the Alter Rebbe. He said there were many big scholars, but only two of them really plummeted to the depths. What did he think about the Vilna Gaon? So there was a reporter who had an interview with the Rogachover's older years, and wrote down the whole thing. And he asked the Rogachover, "What do you think about the Vilna Gaon?" And the Rogachover said with the Vilna Gaon, he knew he was an expert in all wisdoms. The Friedrich Rebbe has a whole description how the Vilna Gaon was an expert in every wisdom there is, in music and mathematics and science, everything. And the Rogachover said he was an expert in all the wisdoms. But when it comes to learning Talmud Bavli, there's a specific method, the correct method, and not necessarily did he master that method.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what this reporter says.
He didn't say what it was.
He's saying, well, he has the method.
What?
Rogachover is saying he has the method.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what he's saying he has the method, and that's why. Anyhow, the Vilna Gaon and the Rogachover have a big debate about a Sifri in this week's Parsha. What does the Sifri say? Now we're almost done. Look at the top right side of the page. The Sifri says like this, the top right side of the second page. Rabbi Nosson says, Bebezdin Hargu, they killed Bilam in Bezdin. As it says in Yeshua, Bilam ben Be'er HaKoisem, they killed by the sword. Now let's get something straight. In this week's parsha it says, Bilam ben Be'er, they killed by the sword. In Yeshua it says a little bit more than this. It says, Bilam ben Be'er, the sorcerer, Bnei Yisrael killed El Chalaleim. The pasuk we saw in the Gemara in the first page. And it was from the words El Chalaleim that teaches me that he was killed in the 4 ways of Bezdin. Here we're quoting a choppy pasuk. This is not exactly what the pasuk says. The Vilna Gaon made many notes on Gemara, and Kabbalah, on Medrashim. The Litvishes have a tradition that the Vilna Gaon wouldn't change a piece of Gemara unless it answered 15 questions, and he wouldn't change something in the Zohar or Kabbalah unless it answered 150 questions. I don't know. Sounds like exaggerations. I don't know. It's also well known the Rogachover was unhappy with many of the Vilna Gaon's alterations of the text, and he apparently said because the Vilna Gaon had kashas, so he altered the text. But the kashas could be simply answered.
Isn't that the right way of
Well, over here the Vilna Gaon says, well, exactly. Over here the Vilna Gaon, the Vilna Gaon says to change the text of the Sifri. He says the Sifri is saying the same thing as the Gemara. It's meant to say like this. Rabbi Nosson Omer bedalad misas hargu. They killed him with the 4 death penalties. Shenemar, and then you quote the whole pasuk. Bilam ben Ba'er, the sorcerer, the Yidden killed Becherev el Chalaleim, which is the main thing, because we compare Bilam's death to the way Bezin kills all the different Chalalim, the 4 misas of Bezin.
So whenever he had a question, not question, but few questions, he did it like this.
Well, I guess.
The nusach.
Well, yeah, he says that he feels that the Sifri is meant to say the same thing as the Gemara. First of all, the Sifri, according to many, Rav helped put it together. Rav is the guy who says in the Gemara that the statement are the 4 death penalties. And also, the way we have it is strange. How do you see from the pasuk that in Bezin they killed him? Maybe they killed him during war. Like, how does this pasuk show that they killed him in Bezin? But if you say Bezin's meant to be Dalad Missus, maybe it was Rosh Hashanah's Dalad Mem, and then it came Beis Dalad, whatever, and then a few words of the pasuk is missing, the main words, the words El Chalaleim, which is the main words of that pasuk in Yeshua. Now, the Vilna Gaon is going to say, the way the pasuk's quoted here, just quote the pasuk in Parshas Matos.
Maybe it's focusing on the word HaKaisim.
So, the Vilna Gaon therefore alters the whole text. He says that it's not Bezdin, it means he was killed in the 4 ways. And the Rai is from the pasuk in Yeshua, the full pasuk, with the last words, El Chalaleim, saying they killed Bilam the way they kill the way Bezdin kills all the dead people, which is the 4 ways. Okay. Comes the Rogachover. Look in the left-hand side of the page, the 2nd paragraph. This is the Rogachover. Bilam, the son of Ba'er, they killed by the sword. Says the Rogachover in Sifri Mevi Krod the Yeshua. In the Sifri, it brings the pasuk of Yeshua. There it says Hakaisim, the sorcerer. In Parshas Matos, it doesn't say Hakaisim. In Yeshua, it does. The Amr, it says in Bezin they killed him. In other words, the Rogachover says, leave it, our version. Don't make the 2 alterations of the Vilna Gaon. Ritzon Eloymar, the Svirule, Command Amar, Bezdin, Ben Noyach, Muzar ala Kishuf. A guy has 7 commands, 7 mitzvot. Can a guy do magic? It's machloikas in Gemara Sanhedrin. Rabbi Shimon says a guy is warned on magic. Other Tanaim hold not. The Rambam seems to paskin not. The Rambam doesn't mention anywhere that a guy is warned to do magic. We had a whole shir about it by Eliezer when he did his nichush. You know, Eliezer being a ben Noyach, according to the Rambam, it's a non-issue. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai holds goyim are warned even on kishuf. Now, this is from the Sifri. Who wrote the Sifri? Rav helped put it together, but who the Sifri reflects whose opinions? Rabbi Shimon. It's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Stam Sifri is Rab Shimon. When the Sifri says something, now here Taka quotes Rab Nosson, but Bechlal, the Sifri reflects Rab Shimon's opinion. So it says the Rogachover doesn't throw that in, but L'cher, it's what he refers to. L'cher, Rabbi Nosson in the Sifri, you could say easily, he holds like Rab Shimon. A guy gets killed for magic. Bilam was killed because he was a sorcerer. Now, so, how does Rab Nosson see it in the pasuk though? Because it says Bilam the sorcerer they killed by the sword. But how does he know they killed him in Bezdin? Leave it in our version. They killed him in Bezdin. Where do you see it from? From the word sword. How does the word show it? So the Rogachover says, Ulekach nokat cherev. The word sword means a din Torah. He said, I'll show you 2 sources. Look in Taisus Yevamis, page 109, Sanhedrin, page 36. What does it say? They look at the bottom of the page. I have them both. Look at the bottom of the page on the left. It's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. When Bezdin paskins a capital case, they start from the side. They don't start from the main scholar because no one's going to argue. You start from the side. Minanimly, what's the source? Rabba bar Bachana Amar Rabbi Yochanan mehacha. When David was faced with Novel, who there was an incident between David HaMelech and Novel. David ends up killing him and marries his wife Abigail, a great story. But David tells Anashov, David tells his men, "Chirgru ish escharba, let each man gird himself with his sword. Vayachru ish escharba, each man took his sword. Vayachru gam David, David also took his sword." What's the Gemara saying? They convened to discuss what to do with Novel. And David said, let every man take out his sword. In other words, voice their opinion about his execution. Everyone took their sword and then David. That teaches you, says the Gemara, when you're doing a capital case, you start with the side, then to David, then to the king, or then to the head of the
There's
Sanhedrin.
no kipshute over it? There's no...
No, definitely no, there's definitely Kipshuta, but the Gemara is learning this halacha from there. So what is he says, the Rogachover? The word sword is a code word for beis and giving capital punishment. So when the pasuk says over here, Bilam they killed by the sword, and it doesn't say a sword, the sword, becharev, which sword? That means beis and giving the capital punishment. What was it for? Kaisim. And the last line of the page, he quotes another Gemara, Amar Rab Yonasan, la'olam, a dayan should see himself as if a sword is placed between his legs. Which simply means that if a dayan makes any mistake, you're going down to the hot place. But it also means that when a dayan is giving a psak, it's like he's holding a sword. So when the pasuk says Bilam was killed by the sword, that's where Rab Nosson the Sifri sees, it means Bezdin killed him. So the Rogachover says to the Vilna Gaon, don't make any changes, leave it the way it is. Bezdin killed him, what's the source? We need Yeshua, because in Yeshua it says he was a sorcerer. It doesn't say that in Matos.
Right.
But where's the source he was killed by Bezdin? From the word Becharev, not from El Chalaleim. That just shows he was killed with the 4 deaths. That's the statement of Rav in Sanhedrin. But that's not what the Sifri is saying. The Sifri's Rab Shimon, he was killed, exactly.
Rav's opinion, so
Exactly. So it all, according to the Rav, it all fits perfectly.
Not Dalin Mises?
It's not talking about that, something else. That they didn't kill him during war. They killed him in court. They weren't killed during the war. He was killed during court. Because it says Becharev, you see, is a code word for Bezdin giving capital punishment. We need the pasuk in Yeshua because it says he was a sorcerer. And Rab Nosson says he was killed in Bezdin.
Why in the pasuk is it included in the whole war or part of the...
Fakert, when you look at the war, the pasuk divides it. The 5 kings were killed. And Bilam ben Ba'er, they killed by the sword. At Fakert, it's saying, and Bilam was killed
Later.
same time or right after, but in Bezdin he was tried. No one killed him during the war. According to Rab Nosson, no one killed him during the war because they weren't allowed to. Because God never said, Moshe never said. They brought him to court, and he was killed for the sorcery, for the witchcraft. So ultimately, you have quite a few opinions over here of why Bilam was killed. The Mizrahi says, had the Yidden known about the Znus and about that he caused the Yidden to do Avodah Zarah, they would have killed him. Says the Mizrahi, the Yidden were not aware that he was involved in that Eitzah.
That's not groma. You can't kill somebody for groma. No, he didn't. Right?
So, first of all, by a guy you can. If a guy kills someone through groma, you can kill the guy. Yeah. But in addition, he caused the Yidden to serve idols.
It's the same thing as a
He's a Messiah for Avodah Zarah, and there's something called Abazrai of Avodah Zarah. The offshoots of Avodah Zarah, according to many, has the same din of Avodah Zarah itself. And getting someone to do it, like the mace is exactly, you're just causing someone to do it, and even if they don't do it. Exactly. And even if nothing ever happens, it's only potential groma. It's potential groma. Anyhow, but the Mizrahi says no one knew about that. And therefore the Mizrahi learns, at least according to Rashi, he was killed for the bad advice. When he said, go against God and don't fight, he caused a mass rebellion. So they killed him for that. The Maharal says they didn't kill him for his earlier crimes, not because they didn't know, but because Moshe didn't tell them. In that, the Maharal differs from the Mizrahi. The Rashi they didn't know. The Maharal says could be they knew, but Moshe never gave the okay. That means that they're not meant to touch him. But he was a Reidif. He was a Reidif. Or the Maharal says, right, exactly what?
That's the proof that morale's Hasidish.
How's that?
Because by Rabbi, you don't do
Never
anything
seen.
to the Rabbi.
Good. And then the Maharal, or it could be that the fact that he gave the advice put him into the war. So then their war against Midian, so they had to kill him. They didn't need Moshe to give he's part of the war. He put himself into the...
So they didn't ask Moshe, that's for sure?
Yeah, according to that. Unless you go like Reb Nosson, they killed him in court. If court, you would imagine Moshe would have been there.
That's the only case that it could have been.
The Netziv of Voloshin believes a Navi can only be killed in court. And if Bilam was considered a prophet, they had to kill him in court.
He was considered a prophet. Question is, he lost his nevuah by then.
Yeah, yes, that's another thing I had on the paper. That anyhow, but what else did we see?
This line over here.
Then we saw Rabbi Chanina wasn't sure, was he 33, 34? We said that also depends on the whole story. Was he killed for the mirma? Was he killed maybe for the fact he caused all the Yidden to die? Then is like doyeg, and then it would have been 34. But if it's for the bad advice, for the caused them to do adultery and idolatry, or znus with the girls of Ma'av and Midian and the Avodah Zarah, he would have been 30. And Taka was 33. But it could be that bad advice to Mirma was what he gave at the time of the war. He told the Yidden, don't fight with Midian. That was also bad advice. There were a few bad advices that he gave. Which one made him like Achitophel? Achitophel's advice was about Avshalom living with the concubines. So maybe that would have been Bilam's advice to live with the girls of Ma'av and Midian.
Achitophel also, that to live with the concubines, the reason behind this was there was no turning back. Once Achitophel knew, once Absalom did that, there was no turning back.
Right.
Across the line that you can't.
Right, but also it would demonstrate to the public that this rebellion is serious.
Yes.
Anyhow, and then we saw a big debate between, we saw the Gemara that he was killed in 4 death penalties, and then we saw a debate to the Rogachover and the Vilna Gaon about how to read the Sifri. But according to the Rogachover's reading of the Sifri, the reason that Bilam was killed was for a separate reason altogether. It wasn't because he killed 200,000 people. It wasn't because he got us to do znus. It wasn't because of the avodah. It wasn't because of the bad advice. He's Pashut a sorcerer. And he was killed in Bezdin. But according to the Vilna Gaon's reading of that, the Sifri never said that, and he wasn't killed. Because ultimately the halach is, a guy doesn't get killed for witchcraft. It's only Rab Shimon. You have to say the Sifri follows the opinion of Rab Shimon.
So the halacha is machashef.
The Rambam paskins that way. The Rambam says
that what?
a guy doesn't get killed for kishuf.
But Rab Shimon holds that yes.
In Gemara, Rab Shimon holds yeah.
So and the Sifri goes according to.
Bechlal, the Gemara in Sanhedrin says that Sifri Bechlal follows Rab Shimon's opinion.
Shimon ben Shaddach who killed all
Yeah,
the
the
witches.
Ayin Mechashvi. What's that story?
They were goyim.
They were
Maybe not. I don't know.
I mean,
They were in Ashkelon. They were living in Ashkelon. Why were they goyim?
All the witches by Shol.
Right, Jewish. They were Jewish.
And then Avner's mother was, so for sure maybe the other one.
Yeah, would have been Jewish.
Interesting. Shimon ben Shaddach is. Well, you know what? Taka true. Shimon ben Shaddach, because his son was killed because of testimony.
There was 80 witches in Ashkelon. Why were they goyim there? In the
Yeah,
second base, it's a
yeah.
Jewish place. It's a
And
Jewish
not only
place.
that, the ones who got revenge for were witnesses.
Okay. Oh wow. All right, we pulled through.
according to the Rogachover, is there Dalit Misses? Is there Dalit Misses? According to the Rogachover?
That's what the Gemara says.
Yeah, but I'm saying in the Sifri.
Sifri's not talking about that Bechlal. No, it's not what it's talking about.
The three, I'm saying.